I hope everybody's comfortable and ready for a close to 3-hour stream. Maybe it'll be shorter, but definitely not longer. The music you're hearing is being produced live Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the stream today. This is Lightbox 2021. First off, I want to thank Bobby Chu for having me again to do a live stream for you all. I hope everybody's doing well. It's been a very busy week, and I was really hoping to get something nice for everybody here today. This stream is really about the journey I went through to get to a place where I can do what I love to do as a career. And I have very old work from the beginning of that time that I will be sharing with you. I really haven't shared this anywhere else. But hopefully what I will be showing you guys today will help you and inspire you in making decisions for yourself in the road ahead, whether you want to be a cinematic illustrator or not. Maybe you'll find parallels and interesting insights. So yeah, let's get this started. Thank you again for being here. Hello, everybody. Before I get going, I just want you guys to keep in mind, if you want to ask me a question in the chat regarding what I'm talking about, preface it with an all capital question and then colon or a Q, so that way I know. Or even if you want to make it clear, type your question out in all caps. That could also be helpful. But preface it with questions so I don't have to be lost in the chat if there's too much to read through and not get to your questions. So, okay. You will now not see my face anymore, and you will see my Photoshop screen. And here I will start pulling up old work. I don't remember what year this was when I started, but I'd like to safely say that my cinematic career began at Aaron Sims' company. Before that, I was doing work for games, but I really didn't know where I was. I was kind of lost I really didn't know what was going to become of my artistic skill, all that education I had worked for. And it was just one lucky day where I was able to jump on board to do simple storyboarding for Aaron Sims. I think it was just one day's work. And some of you already know this story. I've told this in the past, but after going home from that day, I didn't want to lose that opportunity. He clearly didn't have any more storyboard work for me, so I wanted to sort of show him that I'm very interested and prove to him that I can do this. I can do what I saw on his wall. And I sent him an image that was a zombie, and it was photo bashed. If I could just find it here real quick. Well, if I don't find it, the image is very close to something like this, this is actually used for a horror film called Devil, but this is all photo bashing. It's photo manipulation and adding textures on top of an existing model. And it's trying to convey something very unreal and fantasy in a very believable fashion. So Aaron was pretty impressed by that zombie thing. So this is one of the first shows I was working on, or probably I should say second. One of the first shows I was working on was I want to say that was a Green Lantern. Yeah, so it was still very loose, very undefined. I worked very much in silhouettes and not showing detail. It was taking photos from online and painting on top of them, and I really didn't know how to take things further. And you could see it. So it sticks out very easily because the photo looks like a photo and has the detail of a photo, and then the digital painting on top of it is too flat. It's too digital. It's too perfect. And yeah, this took a while to sort of learn. This was actually the first piece I did. There was I can't remember the story very correctly, but I think there were VFX autopsy shots of these guys that were mutants, I think. I don't remember. But this is one of the very first images I did. This one right here, and then came that. But it doesn't matter. As a group, this is my first job. And I kind of felt like it was unreal, right? So I'm thinking to myself, this is magical. This is all I can do. Like, I'm just painting on top of existing photos that they supply me with. I didn't even have to take reference, and I touch it up and add textures into it and try to make it believable. Now, granted, I had a good sense for lighting because I went through a foundation in painting and figure drawing and landscape painting through Art Center College of Design. And I kind of had a basic understanding on how to make things feel well integrated. But it's still, you could see the amount of application I put on it was very minimal. And for a while that this was the case, but I pushed myself because I was in a situation that I knew opened many doors ahead, and I didn't want to lose that. So my mind was in the right place, but my ego was through the roof, and and I was thinking like I'm at the top. I made it. This is great. And I was pretty blind, very unexperienced, but little by little started seeing other artists work outside of Aaron Sims' company, and it kind of shocked me in terms of the level of skill other people already have. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to keep pushing. Remember, just use more photos, apply things even faster. The faster you are and the more realistic with photo bashing, the better. There's no story, by the way, here with these images. These are not story driven. And this stream is about that and how I ended up finding that. There's no story behind any of these images that I can remember thinking of. It's either about how big a creature is compared to our hero, or how gross something looks, and how real it could look. A random chaos here and there. I'll do these type of shots that I think were a doorway to breaking out of thinking and depending so much on photo bashing. So, doing these frames, I was doing work like this for about 2.5, 3 years, and by the third year, I was starting to finally break into creating paintings, but my structural and figurative work was lacking because I wasn't being observant. I wasn't practicing to be aware of that. Some of these are on top of other people's work that we worked with, and I'm just trying to get designs for wings. I don't think this piece is mine. I think this was somebody. I think this might have been an Aaron thing, and all I added was this type of fleshy webbing here. Yeah, this was for Flash Gordon. This is so muddy and flat, but there's something in these. There's something about the energy, about how I was thinking with textural brushstrokes and the color contrast. Even though the composition is very plain, and I think with this piece right here, I started to finally somewhat get a new process, a new way of working with my tools. And this was very much mainly painted and very little photo application at the bottom. And I was in a time where things were a bit dramatic in my life, and I was just not caring as much whether Aaron, our boss at the time, would have disliked it or liked it that I painted it, because there was a period where because of my skill set, of course, It was highly recommended for me not to paint and just directly use photos, because the clients will look at it and be like, this is too sketchy and unreadable. And I started to just push out of that fear and just paint. And because I was also influenced by the Godfather, Craig Mullins, like most of us are, it sort of gave me a strength to do that. I was like, I'm just going to do it. How did he do that? How did he get to this point of painting? He definitely actually probably had even much deeper fears, because he was probably going from traditional painting into digital, and there were probably a lot of things that were weighing on him. And believe me, thoughts like that, internal thoughts, could always weigh down on you to stifle your creativity. So, yeah, struggling with things like that, I started to just I thought of it like breaking the rules. Just break the rule. Who cares? Just do it. Don't wait for approval. Don't wait for, the go ahead to try something. You just do it for yourself. That's how you'll grow. If you wait, that opportunity might be missed, and it could also never be given to you. So it's interesting thinking about this, because it makes me wonder, why at all did I have this type of chokehold on myself? Why at all did I think like this? Because it's definitely hindering to progress. And I think it's just something natural to how we are all raised, or how we've evolved as artists, or even musicians, or whatever your field of expertise is. There's always a brick wall. And it's a matter of not seeing it as a brick wall. That's what I ended up learning throughout my long growth process and journey, is that what we take in as like, oh, this is impossible. Actually, it's impossible because you're telling yourself it's impossible. But you can do it, and you just have to start doing it and see, and not be afraid of your own work looking sloppy or bad, or in a sense, thinking that your work looks bad is it's an irrelevant judgment. It doesn't matter if it looks bad. You have to just keep going and not care if it looks good or bad. The point is to end up in a place where you're telling something truthful with your work, expressing yourself honestly. And that takes a while to realize. Even if somebody was to tell you that, it won't click. You kind of have to come on to it by yourself. I'd like to imagine so. I mean, I'd like to think that if someone gave me words of wisdom when I was younger and growing, and they said, don't care about your quality, I would have been like, it's all about quality. What are you talking about? And I was like that. It's like, you shouldn't care about this. It's really about, even when it comes down to learning figure drawing, my great mentor, Kevin Chen, he would tell me, it's not about line quality or this or that. Learn the proportion, learn the structure, learn the gesture, learn the core. Then you'll have a solid tool to express life drawing more honestly, more readably. So other people, when they look at it, they could get that feeling you're trying to project clearly. So that's something that was told to me, and it took me my own road. Despite that, people said that a lot to me. It took me getting to my own destination, and that wasn't a point of pride, really, or I know what's better for me. I mean, that is true. I did have that ego and thinking that I know what's best and I know what's better, and so I had a mentor that taught us, leave your ego at the door before you come into my class. This was in Art Center. His name was Bob Cotto, and he taught an amazing painting class. To this day, actually, one of my favorite teachers. He always gave insight and inspiring thoughts that weren't even related to how to paint, or how it's more about how to think as a human being, and also how to see and what to look at and what to appreciate. It's almost like teaching you valuable things about life that you didn't even know. And some of these are repeating again here. Let me try and look at some of these other. Oh, here's as an example. I don't mean to break away, but this was for Black Swan, and I've always been very proud of the fact that I got to work on a Darren Aronofsky film. But it was through Aaron Sims, and I didn't really meet Darren Aronofsky. I mean, we were in LA, he's in New York. And this job came to me out of sheer luck, I feel like, because at the time, I don't think even Aaron knew who Darren Aronofsky was. It's not that he didn't know, but he just didn't care as much, because there were films being made that were much bigger in scale and budget, and that's not, I'm not saying that he was ignorant, but like, I totally understand as a person leading a company and trying to make it grow and be more wealthier, that he took this project and was like, here's some movie about this girl that turns into a swan. I don't know, it just seems silly, so you take a stab at it. I'm like, oh, who's the director? I was like, Darren something. I'm like, Darren Aronofsky? And I was so excited to, like, it's Darren Aronofsky, because I had also just seen Pi and Requiem for a Dream and The Wrestler, and those films really stuck with me, and I love all of his stuff that he's done, and I just kind of held that in me. I didn't show that crazy excitement, like, oh, it's Darren Aronofsky. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do whatever you need, Aaron. And he just let me kind of do majority of these paintings that I was way out of. I'm not even in the ballpark. I mean, this is more in the ballpark of what the film ended up being like, but there's art department work that was spot on. What we did a lot of the times at Aaron's is, if we weren't the main design team, VFX team, we kind of were also a little bit of filler, like, let's help out, which is great too. I mean, you learn a lot from stuff like that as well. And these were painted because I had no idea how to make it use photos for any of these. And when I did it, I remember Aaron giving me feedback like, this is so beautiful. It's actually very beautifully lit. But the painterly aspect of it almost makes it too beautiful for what they want. That's what they said. And I'm like, really? I wonder what the hell they want. Like, that's kind of true. I mean, would Darren Aronofsky ever make a movie that looks like this. So I started to desaturate it and make it a bit more gritty and adding texture to it and sharpening it and then, a ballet pose and trying to get the perspective of the arms to read believable, and everything else will sort of snap in, and I'm blurring edges and adding more texture and just to hide the fact that it's painted. Such an interesting thing. It's an extra baggage in your mind to have to think about stuff like that. Anyway, just felt like I should show you this work because it was a very key moment for my career where I thought I am in the big leagues now, whatever that meant. But I heard it being said by other artists like big leagues, part of the big boys now, bloody blah. And I'm like, yes, Darren Aronofsky. I could put this. I'm gonna put this in the front page of my website and my blog. I worked on Black Swan, and people will look at that and be like, you worked on Black Swan? And lo and behold, that's what it was. And people's reactions was exactly that. It's like, wow, Black Swan. No one really cared about the fact that these images, didn't really help story or anything. It was more about VFX and this transformation process. And I'm saying this because after I was done with Aaron, when I left Aaron Sims, I had a tremendously difficult time finding work because all of this VFX stuff was only applicable to a company like Aaron Sims, and there were many other like it, but I knew at that time that I wasn't 2 years, 2.5 or 3 years, however long I was at Aaron's, in the end, I knew that I wasn't happy doing this. And I'm constantly seeing work by other amazing artists that are doing exactly what I'm trying to do. So a very good friend of mine, Joel Chang, recommended me to a director, Michael Gracie, who he did The Greatest Showman on Earth, and I was lucky to work on that as well. But ended up being brought on to a movie that never got made, but it was a live-action, multicultural martial arts take on Snow White. And it was, a Westerner guy with the dual revolvers. It was the Chinese swords art and the Russian boxer. And so, I did frames. Joel and I boarded out the entire film like this in black and whites. And it was about mood and key beats, and then coloring them. It was very loose. A lot more about the expressiveness. And I think, I feel like this was it. This was the turning point for me where I started to realize the value of telling a story through your work and caring less about whether it looked real or not. It was more about the composition. And things started to click at that point. I'm like, wow, I've actually known this. And it's not about being cocky or again, the pride stuff. It was more about realizing that I have known this, and I can finally open that part of me and start to learn again. I hit a brick wall, but it wasn't a brick wall. It was a realization that I haven't been awake enough to apply my full potential with my work. So I started to, we worked on this for a year and a half, and some of these are actually on top of storyboards, but it was our task to go in and add color. So it's also about color composition, and we're doing color keys. And the task was to bang these out as fast as possible. And again, these being key beats, they're not really sequential in how they tell the story. It's more about these moments that help amplify the gravity of what's happening in the script. So, oh yeah, and these were sort of, I think this was the ending of the film. How could it end? And I guess this was the only thing that we did sequentially, because it's supposed to be something that they write off in this epic landscape, and then it cuts to black. So we did that, and there's a bunch. I mean, I can spend all day in showing all these frames. Oof, it's so much. Here, in some of them, I'm still applying photo, and Mike was like, that works. You know, if you make it feel right, I just don't want it to stand out too much. If you can integrate the photo and still kind of work with the silhouette or the loose painting that you guys do it. And I started to sort of get a better understanding how to freely, more fluidly apply photos to paintings, right? So with work like this, it changed my entire perspective on portfolio and how work could be done. So I did a lot of this, and I think some of these we had a little bit more time to work on some of these, and I was able to sort of spend a bit longer on forms and whatnot. So so yeah, it was this job that helped me get to a solid place, and also movies that I would watch. So after this job, I went unemployed again for quite a long time. And I was living with my parents, and they have been supportive from day one. They never stopped encouraging me, and I feel very lucky for that. So I had an opportunity to work with Alex Mcdowell, who was at the time an owner of a company called 5D, and I did work for Nike. We all did. If I could just find it here. There it is. So it was a lot of more postery stuff, and he wanted things to look very clean and real, yet at the same time expressive in paintings and loose. He liked the gesture, and so this is a lot of photo bashery, but I hit a point where I was starting to understand how to better use that skill set. So everything, about how at the time how I saw Aaron's method of creating work. At the time, I was bashing it in my head. I'm like, it's not just about photo bashing. You have to do both. You have to be expressive, blah blah blah. But when I look back on it, learning that skill set propelled my growth. I was able to do it better and better, and paint better because of it, because I'm starting to pay attention on what makes photo integration work, why it's important for granular detail to be at a specific scale in comparison with other stuff, and how things should look so they don't stick out like a sore thumb in your piece. And when painting for that as well, you start to appreciate noise in your brushwork, and how to leave certain marks behind and not try to perfect them, and let them breathe through the painting, and so on and so forth. I hope this is all interesting for you guys. Let me just take a look at the chat here really quick. Wow, you guys. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Wow. Thanks, everybody. This means so much. Okay, let me get to the next thing here. So after Alex Mcdowell, when that all ended, and that was a great 3-year journey, and it was fun, but it didn't move forward from that point. It was great, but there was something that happened. I don't remember, but that's why we all ended up disbanding. I believe Alex is doing still amazing, and a lot of us that worked there went our own ways and whatever. But I had now started to build a solid portfolio, a direction with my work on how to go about it, how to think about story. It's about the feeling that I evoke is about will be through how I told the story. It's not about the gore or how realistic the image looks. The image could look very stylistic and feel more real than a photograph. So I got hired on another job, freelance, for this web series or web movie, don't remember, called Cambria. And I was asked to do some key beats again for these characters and these dragons burning down castles and villages. And when I look at it now, I'm actually confused as to what I'm looking at. The color is striking to me, and I see a figure here, but I'm losing the idea of the dragon. But you know what? I remember having such a blast doing this, and a thought of it is about the ambiguity. Because when we watch a movie and there's moments that happen because it's in motion, we get it. We know what we're looking at. But if you were to pause that frame, it's a pure abstraction. It's like the cinematographer and the director consciously decided to treat the movie like a painting, every frame to feel like a painting. And film is 24 frames per second, 24 still images. It's the illusion of motion. So like with that in mind, it gave me courage and more freedom to start to break out of this hypnotized state of mind on what is the right way and what is the wrong way, and just do it. Just do what feels right. And I went on this road of just doing things because they feel right, and I honed that skill. That gut feeling became more accurate and stronger, and it was just a matter of balancing it out. It was a matter of like finding that middle ground of clarity and feeling, so the client could be happy, right? So that's kind of what I ended up doing. And there's some actual, I think some of these are, oh wait, you've seen it. I showed you guys these. This is another take on the dragon breathing, but it's a little bit more clear. But I'm trying to get a thing for scale. If he's standing on the dragon's tail, but it doesn't know it, it feels like a mound or something, and the thing starts to breathe fire, but he's not being burnt alive because he possesses a power. I honestly forgot what the story was, but you could see here I'm starting to actually think about how my composition could at least keep us in this area, the tail swinging back and pointing back at the action, and the cape, if it's being blown back, it's literally also something that's pointing back at the dragon. I'm sure at one point I was doing things where it was like an infinity thing. And why infinity? Because maybe they're meant to be, there's a bond between them. They're locked together like a chain, like infinity. So I'm starting to think now a bit more out of the box, if you want to call it that. I'm starting to feel a bit more free with my thought process and choices that I'm making with my work. Again, this happens because I was watching movies and listening to director commentary and hearing them talk about the choices, for example, the choices Scorsese made in Casino or Taxi Driver, and why he chose to shoot certain things a certain way because we are in the mind of Travis, or we are in the mind of Ace Rothstein, and the paranoia that he wants to build in Aviator, or so. It was a matter of linking that through into my painting. You know, I'm learning from these masters, and they don't paint at all, but they are master storytellers. Their painting are the movies, and that also clicked for me when I thought about it like that. Why not treat my work as if it's a moment from a movie? If I've paused the shot in such a place that whoever looks at it could immediately think that this is a moment from a movie before anything else crosses through their mind, is, wow, it feels like a moment from a movie. And that was a goal. And it came down to mimicking the feelings of films that have been influenced. So I started doing that more and more, and the response was more in tune with what I wanted, and I knew I was going the right direction, and things started to click and be more in tune. I was starting to feel more confident with, like, yes, going with your gut feeling, and it was a liberating thing, because what's more better than that, to feel like, because the risk you took, here's a great payoff. There's nothing more free than that. And on top of that, you start to think for yourself, your own personal work. It encourages you to want to explore more for yourself and not for clients or other people's movies. I mean, that's amazing to do that. But my personal work started to grow at that point. I started to really dial into the powerful stuff. I mean, of course, there were times where, I was in a dark place and not working and thinking that I'm never going to make it in this industry. This is impossible. And because of that surrender, it forced me to just go ahead and try whatever, because what do I have to lose? And getting to that state of mind of, like, screw it, just do it. Who cares if it sucks? That is very important to even get there before you get into that darkness, right? But it's hard. Sometimes it really takes for you to reach that point so you can realize the power behind just doing it, just taking the risk that you need to take. Let me see here if anybody has questions. I hope this has been interesting so far. Okay. Sam, thanks for being here. Sam Woodfin. He asks, when were you at Art Center and who were your mentors? If I could remember the years, I was in Art Center from, well, I graduated 2006, so counting back 5 years, or counting back 4 years and a term off. I don't know exactly how that falls in, but I graduated 2006. My mentors were Mike Hernandez, Gary Meyer, Bob Cotto, Dallas Good, Kevin Chen, Mike Hassar, David Luce, Charles Hu. Those were my painting and drawing mentors. And also my classmates, Kinman Chen, Kang Lee, Brian Lee. I went to, I want to say that Steve Shirley and Vince Lee, Randy Bantog, Jackson I work with at Marvel currently. Yeah, it was a mixed group of to this day, amazing talent. And it was also a very confusing and frustrating time, because my mind was in a different place. I was kind of competing and thinking that it was about being the better figure drawer, if that makes sense. And it really I mean, that helped with the growth of my work, but it was also something that made me give up a lot and just not draw at times when I had anger in me, and why am I not better than this person, or why am I lacking, or why am I practicing heads and hands and I'm not getting better, what am I doing wrong, screw this, all that. And it's a cycle for 4 years at Art Center. And when I graduated Art Center, I had more maturity, of course. I was past that point. I started to realize that it's about letting go. And funny enough, my figure drawings at the end of my Art Center career looked the best for me. And it was because I let go and I started to feel it more gesturally and experiment with more graphic shapes as opposed to trying to overanalyze forms and whatnot. And those are all important, but other people's thoughts and mentorings can get in your head as well, and that's a normal thing. But I'm never at all blaming anybody else. Back then I probably was, but when I look back at it, it was very immature of me to do so. It's all about seeing where you're coming from, what's your own flaw, and fixing that. So I could continue showing work here, but I also have a demo that I pre-recorded for this Lightbox. And I can continue to talk about this while you guys watch the painting happen. Let me see questions here. Juan Haidar asks, are all these works as freelance? Yes, all that work was as freelance. And I do get a lot of questions of like, how do you start as a freelancer? Do you need to work as full-time first? I don't know. However, it helped me tremendously that I had friends that were working in the film industry. And I didn't beg, or I wasn't trying to be annoying, please get me in or anything like that. But I showed, and I kept in touch with those friends. Jared Moran's being one of my longtime friends. He's the one who helped me get into Aaron Sims. But before that, Jackson helped me get into Spark Unlimited, and they were doing games. That was my first job out of being 2 years unemployed from Art Center. That was actually my first legitimate job as a concept artist, doing textures and multiplayer map explorations on top of 3D models. And those, I wish I saved them somewhere. I can't find them. So anyway, the freelance thing, I don't know if it's lucky or not, but it was definitely, I just saw it as a start. I didn't care if it was freelance. It was like, they actually, I always imagined, you want to be full-time. You have the ultimate stability at that point. You never have to worry about it. And then the longer I am a freelancer, there's talk like, it's the best to be freelancer because this and that, and you're always hunting and gaining that skill of finding work, and you don't want to be just dependent on one place, and I realized that all of that is mumbo jumbo. You want to be doing what you love, and if you're working at a place that you love to work with, because the people that you surround yourself with, that's the best. And currently I find myself in that situation with Marvel. Everybody at Marvel, Ryan, Andy, Jackson, Rodney, Anthony, everybody I work there, I've known for a long time. So it's kind of like a dream, a lucky dream to be amongst people that will inspire you and have zero toxicity. I've never experienced a toxic time in my career, and hopefully none of you guys have to go through that or have experienced that as well. But Hey, Alex Otwood. How's it going, man? Let me get to another question here. Whoa, there's a lot of. And by the way, if I missed anybody's question, um, I leave it in the comments at the end of this. If I didn't answer anybody's question, leave it in the comments. Or maybe it was because there's a slight delay with what I'm saying right now in the stream, and if you had to go or something, you know, probably missed my answer. But Gab Joey asks, did you use many references? Yes, constantly. And I still to this day use a reference. I've never stopped using reference. Kinman. Kinman, how's it going, man? Are you responsible for coming up with the emotional metaphors to a key moment, or is it presented to you on the script? That's a great question, Kinman. I would say it's 50-50. There were times where the script, for example, on Snow White and the Seven, there's a moment where it goes, and then they fight. And Michael Gracie told us we need to come up with the fight. And that's kind of where, I mean, it was intense, but that's kind of where the idea of like, okay, what would be cool to see? Joel and I were in a way directing a movie through story beats, and what would be an emotional moment. So we'd be going back and forth and trying to figure out what is more impactful. And so sometimes that's exactly how it is, and sometimes the script is already beautifully written and we just translate it visually. At Marvel currently, it's again 50-50. Sometimes the script is exactly what they wanted, and we are solving a visual problem, maybe for mood and lighting, to match the writing. And sometimes they don't know what they are looking for, and we are supposed to inspire them. So yeah, it's a nicely mixed bag like that. It's good to see you, man. Alex Oddwood asks, can you give an in-depth preview of your thought process of your use of the mixer brush? Thanks. I could probably do that at the end of the stream. Sure. In-depth preview. Santander Bumbasi asks, what career paths would you suggest for a painter, illustrator that's trying to get any job in the art industry for the first time? It can be in games, films, comics. That's a great question. Let me think about that. And let me start the video here. Okay, 1 second. Okay, to your question. I think if I was to give any advice to someone starting off, is observe and listen. Learn from your coworkers, learn from the people that are hiring you, learn from people that are already working. In order, if it's about I misread your question. I'm sorry. I just now realized that you're asking what career paths, and I'm answering something completely different. Oh, me. Okay, so what career paths would you suggest? I think you should follow. I think you should follow the what you truly love to do with your art, what you like to express through your paintings. Or 3D models or sculptures, and try and see what that could apply in. Use it as a spear to break through. You know what I'm saying? It's more about syncing together with what you love to do and what the industry can use you for, I guess. So, like, in terms of career path, I mean, I guess it's about understanding all the different roads you can take. And believe me when I tell you, right now there's so many different venues compared to what it was back when I started, and compared to what it was like before my time, when I was in middle school and hearing stories about Mark Westermo, creating the poster for Total Recall, and I'm like, what the hell? That's impossible. I'll never get there. Safe Purge asks, if it's not too personal, what do you think the source of your anger was? Source of my anger. I think the source of my anger was that I was being lazy and thinking that things will just come to me easy peasy, and I was doing nothing about it. I wasn't actively pursuing it. I was kind of waiting for things to happen and thinking that I was working hard when I wasn't working hard enough. That was probably my source of anger, because that created a chain reaction to make me feel like I was worthless, and I'm not going anywhere with all this time being spent. And really comes down, it's on me. It has nothing to do with the world around me, or if I'm comparing myself to my friends, like, how come they're already working at ILM and I'm not, and how come? And it's all on how much time and love you put into your own work. It's not about hard back-breaking work. It's about how much love you put into it. I think that's a key, and that's probably very hokey, but it really comes down to that. It's your passion. It's the energy you devote to what you want to do. Not as a career, not to get more money, but what you just want to do. And of course, in the back of our heads, we know that could possibly land us a job because we're aware of it, right? I mean, today, you could be an amazing, evocative painter that all you paint is beach balls, but in interesting scenarios. And that will maybe make you be an amazing gallery artist. I don't know. But I want to say that our spectrums have grown, broadened even more as people and what we take in. So, sorry to branch off there with that rant, but so with this painting here, I very often start my work tiny. This is actually a very small thumbnail on my screen, but in the replay of the video, it's slightly bigger, which is okay, so you guys could see it, but it's really tiny on my screen. And I'm kind of scratching and scribbling values and whatnot just to get somewhere. However, this painting is inspired by the cover image on this YouTube video, in which you'll see towards the end of the demo. And my goal was to fuse them together. With a lot of my personal work, my goal has been to tap into a dream logic type of state, where if I'm looking at the work, I want people to feel like they're staring not only at a still frame from a movie, but maybe a moment from a dream, if it could feel like a memory of a dream. And that's hard, because it's very difficult to... How do you take a snapshot of that? How do you remember this? So it's all about the feeling. And I'm relying on very basic stuff to get feelings across: lighting, color, composition. So it's just a play of that right now. So I'm kind of chiseling it out and seeing what it could be. All right, back to the questions here. Okay, so sorry for taking so long to read through these, but I just needed to catch up. Juan Haidar asks, what you think are the most important aspects when doing a keyframe illustration? Telling a story. And you know what? I learned that even more so in the past couple of years because of my beautiful fiance, wife, Jenny Francisco. And she's actually currently working in the film industry as a story development artist. But here's the thing. It was a breaking point where I started to again fall into this place of I'm just going to start posting doodles on Instagram. Why? This was her question. She already knew me extensively. And why? What are you doing with that? You have established the ground for yourself, which is story. You're telling story, mood. You're going to start posting doodles now. Why? From where is this coming from? Do you just want to do that to gain attention? Is this what you're about? Is it just about finding followers or whatever? And at the time, I was just a bit kind of frazzled by that. I'm like, what the hell? I just want to post doodles. But jokes aside, best advice I've ever been given, and it was something very minor. Stay on track. Stay with your story. I've always found that telling a story successfully, whether it's man shooting gun at a ship, that's the story in the frame. How interesting can you paint that? whether it's guys standing in a hallway. How interesting can you tell that? What is the story around that? Is it going to be reverse engineered? Is it more than just a dude standing in a hallway? Maybe he's sad because he's trapped, and that's why we're placing him in a hallway, in a corridor, the composition leading to that, and so on and so forth. So storytelling is the most important part, in my opinion, in a keyframe illustration. It's the story that leads to the feeling that you're trying to evoke. Now, the story comes from a feeling. I feel like we need to have a feeling first. We need to have that dream first. And then you can pull a story out of that. I'm inspired by David Lynch a lot. And he says those things as well. You know, an idea to him is like a fish. When you go fishing, sometimes you catch fish, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you catch an idea and you write it down. You better write it down. And sometimes you don't. And it's okay. But it's never something you ought to be like forcing yourself. Like, I need an idea. What's the thing? Come on, idea. I don't think that ever works. You usually end up struggling even worse from that. But yeah, story it is. Karasakan. Oh, hey man. Good to see you here. He asks, do you think these principles and concepts apply to all many creative processes, context? I'm a semi-professional musician. That's a great question. I think it does. I'm not a professional musician, but I don't think that matters. When you hear Led Zeppelin or Jimi Hendrix play, that's coming from the heart and soul. You know, that's evoking something really powerful in the way they sing. And you can argue, oh, they were on drugs, or they did drugs to get to that point. Whatever. Doesn't matter, because the end result is filled with so much emotion and story and the history behind all along the Watchtower and what's that called? the Zeppelin, when the leaves blow away, or whatever you want, or even Simon Garfunkel. When you listen to America by Simon Garfunkel, you want to cry. Just when the story, when the song starts, you want to tear up. It's that powerful, and you don't know why. I mean, it's probably because of the progression of notes, and it does something. But who analyzes that? There's something longing, something distant about how that track starts, and there's like very interesting mixes that are happening. Same with there's great Beatles songs like that as well. And you want to go back further. I mean, you listen to Beethoven or Mozart. I mean, there's some really, really powerful things. Good luck analyzing it. You just take it in. I personally think music is the most raw and real method of creating a feeling, an experience for a person. I actually started with music when I was a boy, a little boy. My mother was a music teacher for first graders, kindergarten. You know, she in Bulgaria, where I'm from, music was mandatory in schools, and I learned how to play a 1/18 size violin. And I performed in front of an audience. I didn't even know it. But when I think about it, I'm like, how was I never nervous? An audience? There was one time when I looked up to look at to the crowd. I'm like, holy cow, there's people. I think I messed up in that moment. I forgot my place because I'm playing with our mentor who's giving us rhythm through piano, and I looked up and I froze, and she told me it's okay, let's start again, and she started playing, and I would go back into it because it was ingrained. I'm not saying I loved it. It was definitely a thing I didn't like learning, but because of that, I'm grateful. It's ingrained in me. I've known it since forever, and I understand the power behind audio, let alone visual. So when you watch great film, that applies. When I was talking about this earlier in the drawing jam, when the captain of the boat gets bit in half in Jaws, and all he hears is the water slushing and the canisters and his scream. It's exactly the story he told in the drunken state before all that happens. Doll's eyes and the hollering and the screaming and all. But it's all told through audio. I mean, it's bloody as well to watch, but film with great audio design is magic. You don't touch that. You don't mess with it. You leave it alone. Don't debunk it. You just experience it. So with music, this 100% applies. I don't know how exactly to give a professional answer, but yeah. Jacob Bustos asks, do you ever get stuck choosing between two extremely compositionally similar versions of a painting you're working on, like a background that's just slightly darker than the foreground? That's a great question. Yes, I get stuck a lot in work like that, and it's what gets me out of it is deciding my priorities, pulling away. I was always taught to step back from the painting. The reason why I started this thumbnail, the painting you're watching right now, at a really small scale is the same reason why we step away from our canvas to see our painting from a distance. With the same philosophy, you step back psychologically. You ask yourself, what is this all about? Why is it competing? Why is it not interesting? And in that case, how do I strengthen it? Maybe it's an entirely different composition. And sorry to branch off here, but it's moments like that could still, to this very day, be challenging. Because let's say there's a deadline, and what you're working on, they've already kind of set their eye on what you've done originally, but what you did originally is not, you didn't feel it right, but you now have to execute it to a final state. So those are always lessons I relearn to this very day. I make that mistake again and again here and there, where I'm like, I started painting and presented, and it's like, they loved it. Finish it. Oh, damn it. I have a better idea. And sometimes I do it and the original version, and I feel good about it. But sometimes I've done it where I'm like, I'm just going to redo it and not tell them. And they'll like it. They'll have to like it. And they're like, no, they didn't want this. They like this. I'm like, but this is better. This doesn't happen. Actually, what I just said doesn't happen as often, but that was a learning process of mine, especially with Marvel. I would sort of start things over, and it was a struggle, both for my supervisor and myself, because they're getting frustrated. It's like, what are you doing? And I'm getting frustrated because I know I can produce something better for them. That's my goal always. So I think we all struggle with stuff like that. But yeah, I did. With that in mind, it's always good to keep a distance between your work to the very end, before you start finalizing things, you're sort of not attached to it, so you can work with it more freely and figure stuff out. It's much easier to do that for personal work, of course, because there's nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. Nobody's waiting. There's no deadline. So, Gab Joey asks, do you know how to write scripts? It's a must. I don't know how to write scripts, but for example, again, Jenny, my fiance, she helps develop story through by boarding it. So that's more possible today than it ever has been in the past. I like to think. I don't write scripts, but you can definitely create a story through with your art. Maybe it is a must to learn to write, to answer your question. Maybe that is a good skill to also put on yourself. Much like it would be an interesting thing to learn how to play a piano or a guitar. Fine-tune your musical sensibilities. All those things are great. It's a matter of having the will and making the time for it. Lou asks, it might be too personal. If so, don't hesitate to ignore it. Have you ever had to deal with depression and lack of meaning of it all? Oh man, that is a great question. I honestly don't think I have. I mean, I've known people that have dealt with depression, and it's my sad moments and just dark feelings are not, I can't, and it's not about comparing it, but like I can't compare that to what actual depression is for people, and it's just rough. I wouldn't know, how to help someone like that. There's great professionals that do know how to help, places. I think it's called BetterHelp. I've heard that many times in podcasts and whatnot. You can actually gain a mentor or a counselor, and they help you with real problems like that. So, to answer your questions, whatever sadness I've experienced, it's always boiled down to me not being self-aware, or like, come on, get up, get off your ass and do something about it. Don't just mope around and think it's not going to happen because you haven't even tried. That's what I would tell myself. So, that is a hard question to ask, and I hope, if anybody here is dealing with something very real like that, to hopefully find the strength and courage to work through it all, because I'm telling you, it's freedom. It's so worth it to persevere whatever darkness you have. As a matter of fact, when I have felt dark or isolated, whatever you want to call it, I use that in my work. I use those feelings and express it, and it, in a way, it gets rid of it. Because sometimes seeing it visually represented, what I was feeling, is either great and beautiful and you want to share it, or it's silly and you're like, I'm never going to think this again. It's I have a time where I painted myself dead because I was angry about stuff, like what I was saying earlier. Like, I'm never going to get anywhere. So I painted myself, I drew myself dead, and then I painted it. And that drawing is sitting somewhere. And I looked at it probably months, a year later, because I snapped out of it already, but I stumbled upon that piece. And I'm like, what the hell? It actually scared me because I knew in me that it wasn't me, you know. But it was powerful enough because it came from a place where I'm like, there's something in that. I'm going to remember this, and I will always dig deep to pull from a real place, real emotions like that. Whatever you're feeling, I guess what I'm trying to say, use it for your art. Never let it go to waste. Even if it's the darkest, most vulnerable thing, use it. It will only make you grow as an artist. Oh, here I'm cutting and pasting jungle thing. Roots of a tree or something, just to quickly get a feeling of this textural quality that I can have. I don't think it matters this early on, but it was definitely kind of helping me feel things out for this shot. And you see me reuse the same texture again and again in different places, and sort of finding these angles and thinking about these light shapes abstractly. Anyway, let me see some of the other questions. Sophia Zanetti asks, if you could go back in time and speed up your artistic career to be where you are now, what would have done differently? That's a great question. I would have probably told myself to enjoy the process of learning more. Not that I hated it, but I, definitely was a lot more aggressive and hitting these mental barriers of like, I'm not getting anywhere, everything I've been saying so far. But it would have helped me a lot if I just kind of was a bit more free of that, and also dedicated my time more seriously to the art, because I was definitely distracted, and I was playing video games a lot, like unhealthily, where I'm just spending all day on World of Warcraft, and then at the end of it I'm like, I still got it. Like, I'm reminded that I did nothing with my art, and my justification is, don't worry. You need a little bit of a break. I still got it. And when I look at my work, everything that comes back comes flowing from like what I've heard from my mentors or even friends, and them saying things like, you got to practice. You got to put in the time. That's all it takes. It's simple. Got to put in the time. That goes through. I'm like, fuck, I'm not practicing. I'm level 55 in the blue. But who cares? I need to get somewhere with my art. Yeah, that's kind of, I would have probably liked to have been a little bit more mature with my work. But you know what? I think it all lines up well I wouldn't want to change a thing because all of my struggles built my art and my character and who I am. Maybe if I didn't have those struggles, I would be a spoiled asshole today. Oh, it's not that big deal. I don't get it. Why can't anybody do this? I wouldn't have a perspective the way I have now. So probably, to honestly answer that, I wouldn't change a thing. Tam B asks, what steps do you go through to start training yourself to focus on story when making art? Oh, that's a great question, Tam. First off, I watch movies, and I not only watch them, I experience them. I don't analyze them or think about what I don't pause it and ask questions. I let it flow out once, twice, and sort of I immerse myself in it. And then I watch another movie like that and another. And then I listen to music that inspires me. And then from that, I pull those ideas and thoughts and I start something. And with that in mind, I try to inject story into it. Like what could be happening in this piece that is inspired by David Lynch's Dune and David Fincher's Alien. A mix of these movies. Oh, maybe something could be happening in that style. So, so it could feel more alive. And when I have that right feeling, when I'm only getting better at honing that skill of getting that feeling right again in the future. I don't know if this sounds too fantastical or scientifically unproven or whatever, but I definitely feel like feeling in your art has a lot to do with how potent it is. And how do you explain feeling? Can you analyze feeling? I mean, you could probably say feeling is because of how the story is told and the content that you're telling, the context, what's happening in, let's say, in Ilya Repin's painting, Ivan the Terrible, father holding his son because they fought each other and his son's head is bleeding. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know this painting. If you don't, look up Ivan the Terrible on Google Images, Ilya Repin, and you'll see some very powerful, not just that, but his entire body of work. Even his portraiture is just, he captures character and emotion so well. You could say that the feeling is, and the mood is evoked through story, but I feel like it needs to come from having a feeling in the first place to attach it to. So to train that feeling, watching good movies, watching movies you like, is almost like training your dreams. It's almost like you're training yourself to dream better dreams. That's very weird, because I don't even know if that's what's happening, but I've had a lot of vivid dreams because of certain films that I've seen. I've had a lot of nightmares because of certain films that I've seen. And aside from movies, it's also about the experiences, what we do in life. Maybe you hung out with friends at a park and the sun was setting and there was a cool breeze, but it's still hot. And all you guys did was play, hacky sack. Or you did something silly like fold up paper and paper airplanes. And the guy across the street yelled at you and said, "Hey, you're making a mess." And you laughed at him and you continued doing it anyway. But it's a memory like that maybe you have a sense to it. You remember the smell of the jasmine in the air, in LA in particular, or you remember the sound, the color of the light, the orange light above the basketball court, stuff like that, and that stays in you as a feeling. Maybe you have dreams from that. Yeah, I hope that helps as an answer. It's kind of, I think I kind of gave you a little bit of an obscure answer, but I hope that helps. There's a lot of questions. Thank you, guys. Let me just scroll down here. Max asks, are you interested in being an actual cinematographer at all? I am. I really would like to, especially create my own short movies, and I have the freedom to do that at any time I want, and I have the tools to do it with. Even with the phone, you can do it to tell a story, and with the compositional senses, I would love to dabble in that. But the thing that also gets into my head is a real cinematographer and the knowledge that they have about everything. It's not just the camera. Cinematographer is like the second thing next to the director. Like they can suggest the director for what could happen in the scene so it could play out better. You know, I've heard stories like that. I mean, they must be really good. Scorsese's cinematographer on Goodfellas, he has suggested a lot of ideas. Like, no, I think Tommy should walk out first, and I will push in, because then we're talking about his story and that he's about to get killed or whatever. And Scorsese is like, I like that. Let's try both. But, you know, that takes certain type of knowledge and experience. I'm not afraid of it, but how the hell would I ever start that right now? I don't know. So I'll probably just do my own thing. And if it gets anywhere, it does. If it doesn't, at least I loved doing something that has inspired me all this time. Yorgami asks, how do you decide how much detail to put into a keyframe illustration versus being more abstract, color, mood based? Oh, that's a great question. Well, one thing, it's about controlling how we see shots in movies and where the detail is, how things can be captured through a lens. There's a certain type of depth. Not everything is in the same focus. Things compress and they blob together in the distance, and in the foreground maybe things are a bit more separated, and you can see the grain on the asphalt or the sweat on the cup or whatever, but in the distance you won't see the sweat on the cup. So it's like it's about asking yourself, maybe it has to do with scale. Is it more than just controlling the eye through a 2D image? You know, when it comes to detail, the stuff that's important to me is the stuff that helps tell the story. Abstracting it or fine-tuning it, either way, it's still going to be an abstraction of detail. It should be there to tell a story. Now, with the painting you're seeing me do right now, I'm this recording, that is, it's the detail that I'm putting in is a means of creating a sense of like this darkness and this void, and I'm breaking it up a bit, just so it could end up feeling a bit more naturalistic and less scripted, less planned, even though the shot is very almost centered and it's about this character's mind. I don't know who this person is or what they're doing or what he's doing, but if it's inspired from a feeling of a dream, I definitely want to get that across, that quality across, that it's a feeling of a dream. So all the details are going to sort of be about that. Amir asks, do you get frustrated when you can't express emotions in your work? How do you tackle that feeling? That's a great question. Oh my God. I love that question. Yes, I get frustrated. And I ask myself, why can't I get to that place? Why can't I get that right feeling? And usually that leads to my way out, the key out of the rut. When you answer it honestly, when you're true to yourself, and you pinpoint whatever the distraction could be that's making you not get to where you want to be with your work. Whether it's something said, something that someone said, at work, or you bumped into somebody you didn't want to see at a gas station, and they ticked you off, and it's just playing back in your head, and you're like, and now you're supposed to start this piece, and you have a deadline on it, and it's eating you from the inside, and you're like, I can't get past this block in my mind. I'm constantly thinking about this. Or maybe it's something really sad. You lost someone or something, and you need it. You need to find it, or you are grieving. Maybe at that point it's just good to take a break and reflect and be grateful for where you are, who you have in life. Or if you lost something and you're like, I can't do it without it. Just be grateful for what you already have and figure out a solution. You know, I'm talking about like a corrupt file, maybe. You know, you've had you're in the flow, and then your thing crashes, and you're like, God damn it! And you start punching holes in the wall, and now that adds a layer because you have to go to Home Depot to buy, things to fill up the holes. I'm just kidding, but it's stuff like that. You kind of, I mean, I've learned this from, again, my fiance Jen would tell me, like, what's the solution to your problem right now, rather than just being upset about this thing. What are you going to do about it? And that's what it comes down to a lot of the time. It's it's also having someone, I'm very lucky to have Jen, and it's talk to your parents or to a good friend about stuff like that. Sometimes they can offer good, honest advice, but your bestest friend in the world is your honesty to yourself. No matter if it hurts the most to be true, like it really is because of that. But, sometimes that could also be a thing of like, you're just being excessively brutal, unrealistic, and you're telling yourself things that are a bit, okay, that's not actually how it is. It's actually very simple. Maybe the solution to your problem is something very innocently simple, you know. It has nothing to do with the drama that has been created already. So yeah, it's just about being true to yourself. And that's something I always try to do with my work, even, is to be true to myself with what I create. I don't want to be creating something that isn't in my heart. And, when I was starting, a lot of my work was that. I remember making a portfolio out of Art Center, and I wanted to work at Blizzard Entertainment, and I had done a bunch of paintings that were just paintings to look pretty. And I'm like, well, anybody would look at this painting and think, oh, he has the skills, we'll hire him. I never put the effort to learn what an artist does at Blizzard. I never put myself in that mindset. It was very entitled, like, things will come to me. It's and I would have, it takes this long journey to think the way I am right now. I would have never thought back then, be true to yourself. I would have never stepped out of my head and been like, it takes you realizing that the problem is your own mind, stuff like that. I'm always pointing at, well, they don't understand what a good piece of art is. That's what the problem is. Like, I was always pointing fingers and not, so I don't know. It's a long experience thing, and we're all going through it. We're all part of this long journey, and I am like you guys. I'm only human, and I make mistakes on a daily basis about a lot of things with my work and also not with my work. And it all is a part of this gigantic web that is in our brain. Art is not just art. It's not in a compartmentalized plexiglass box art and then life. No, art is life. Everything is happening, and because of that, your art is happening. You became an artist because of how your life molded that art choice. So always be aware of and grateful for how things have shaped you in whichever direction you're going. And when you're like that, that should also help you to be true to yourself with your art and appreciative of everything else. And I say this right now because I'm in a way self-reflecting here with you guys, because a lot of the time I devote an insanely amount of long time to my work, and less time on my life, and that's not a good thing. You don't grow like that. There needs to be a balance always. Amir Bourget asked, do I play video games now? Sometimes, here and there. I have Steam installed. Sometimes I play. Sometimes I pop on Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto, and there's some really cool stuff on there, and visually interesting games I'm very interested in, like, especially for reference. You can literally take a shot out of those games and work with it and create a painting. I mean, games have come so far with their engines that can be inspiring. Like there was a Microsoft Flight Sim 2000 something. I forgot what it was called, but the graphics engine is so real when you've maxed out the settings that you can take a shot while flying in air in that Microsoft Sim game that you can probably use it as a base for a piece. Who knows? Like, I haven't tried that, but now that I'm saying it, maybe I'll try something like that one day. Rini Gatto asks, if you had to describe this painting in one sentence, what would it be? It's a great question. Well, judging on where it ends up in the end, I would say in one sentence, dive into darkness. That's what I would say. Because that's kind of what was playing in my head as well. Is just sometimes you have these dreams where you have the curiosity. You're scared shitless, but you have the curiosity to walk into that dark room in your dream, and you do it. And interestingly enough, it makes you wake up, or it plays into something more freeing and less frightening, and you're now floating in water. You know, I've had dreams where I was afraid to fall, and then I go, screw it, I'm falling, and I jump, and I'm scared, and I'm falling forever, and I feel like I'm gonna hit the ground, and I hit the ground, but my body keeps falling, and I don't feel the pain of hitting the ground, and now I'm floating. If I didn't do that to begin with in my dream, if I chose to not, and I forced myself to wake up somehow, or if I woke up from that fear, I would have never experienced that freedom of falling and then floating and realizing that this isn't real, it's a dream. You know, that's actually an interesting experience. I'm not in control as much as I'd like to be when I dream, but when that happens, it's a lot of times I gain control when I give in to what's has that instead of fighting it. Anyway. Amir asks, I'm sure I asked you this question in your previous streams. Feel free to ignore it if you feel it's too repetitive. Are you planning on releasing a full course or a tutorial? There is a future plan for that, but right now, with the amount of work I'm doing with Marvel, and also I'm teaching again at Concept Design Academy, I think those things are on hold. However, I'm always aware that I should continue putting out videos on our YouTube channel. I've been slacking with that, but I have to continue. So there's that as well. Renee asks, how much of the painting do you have solved in your head before actually executing it? Sometimes I find myself noodling with the painting because I don't know exactly what I'm painting. That's a great question. You know, the key to that, the solution to that problem for me is being in the right place in your mind and in your heart to be able to produce the painting. Being in the right place, feeling wise, like I want to create this, and asking yourself why you want to go into that can sometimes make your idea better, because you will run into problems like, I'm going to create this because it would be cool to see a guy with the flamethrower. Well, what is it to that? Just a guy with a flamethrower? No, that's kind of lame. It's just going to be a guy with a flamethrower. What could be happening? Maybe it's a guy with a flamethrower and he's burning a village down. Okay, now we're going somewhere. You didn't give the flamethrower up? That's good. What's happening with this village? What is the contrast you're creating in the story? Is he burning down evil demons, or is he burning down innocent people? What are we going for? Why did you choose guy with the flamethrower in the first place? Just to show fire, a brutality of fire. So like, that's what goes through my head, and I eventually end up either in a different place with that painting, which started from a feeling, or I end up with the right decision for that painting. I almost never try to just start random shit. Just like, I'm going to take a blank canvas and paint. Like, I used to do that. Doesn't feel right. I like to have something to get into. And what helps is listening to music or watching movies, like I've said, or talking to people, or getting inspiration from other people's art, or yeah. Daniele asks, after years in the industry, I find myself jaded and out of love with art. Do you have any strategies for rekindling that lost love? Wow, that's a powerful question. Ask yourself what you loved to do with your art. Ask yourself why you ended up in the industry in the first place. Maybe all it takes is finding something that your clients will respond to ecstatically. Wow, this is something I've never seen before. Maybe that'll spark an interest in you again, and you'll be like, maybe this is my calling again. Or maybe that's a hard one, man. Maybe your love is not entirely in just art. Maybe it's about other stuff. Maybe you need to be creating entire stories. Sorry to interrupt this answer, but what I did here with this painting is I took a shot of the monitor, and what that does to the values is it crushes it. I literally take a shot of my monitor. I don't do this always, but with my phone, and then I import it, and I overlay it, and then I play around with things. Sometimes it comes out great. In this case, it didn't really help much. I ended up removing a lot of it, and yeah. To get back to that answer, I wouldn't straight up give up on your artistic journey, because you're clearly have come this far, and you've been doing whatever you've been doing with your art and making a living out of it. And I think it's probably a sign. It's probably as simple as a sign that you have hit a plateau, and maybe you're searching for something that'll help you grow further. Maybe it has nothing to do with you losing your love for art. Maybe the place you're at isn't allowing you to climb higher, so to speak, psychologically with your art, to find new things to love with your art. It gets harder, but it's not a bad harder. It's not devastating. It's just about it just you can't. Here's the thing, none of us can expect this to be easy. I mean, we're doing things that are so complex with our brains, let alone the motor skill with our hands and eyes. I mean, eyes are part of the brain factor. But like, you should be happy with the fact that you have lost love, because maybe it's a sign that you've hit a spot in your career and in your art where now you have to grow further. This will only help you move forward. You might have been in this rut for quite a while, but just keep at it. Don't give up on it. Be positive about it. I think a lot of people struggle with that. Just be positive. Visualize your goal. And if you can't find that goal, ask yourself why. What are you thinking about? What's going through your mind? Are you maybe thinking about other things at the moment? And maybe that's okay. You're probably in a different place in your head. And that's okay. But if it's pressure on you that you have to keep going to pay the bills, maybe you use that pressure. And maybe you, rather than giving up, try to see it optimistically, try to see it positively, and find that light of a feeling that will get you to break away from this small hill you have to walk over. I hope this helps. I'm pretty sure in the past I've been in that state of mind. I'm trying to recall what it was like. I just can't remember at this moment. Eric asks, do you think it's a good idea to use fan art to motivate you to be more productive? Absolutely. Use everything that motivates you. Everything. It doesn't matter if it's fan art, if it's poster art, pinups, whatever. Use whatever inspires you and makes you happy, or whatever emotion drives you. Use that. Gustav asks, how much effort should you put on learning and mastering environmental fundamentals in order to create effective keyframe art? Lovely art. Thank you so much for this talk. Oh, thank you, Gustav. It's a great question. Put all of your effort in learning. I mean, I don't know what you have in mind by effort. And let me finish that thought here. Here is, by the way, in the painting, here is the piece that you just saw me plop in and change the visual of the color. That is, I matched the color. This is what you saw, and now I'm placing these characters in the environment that was created. This environment I created a long time ago because I wanted it to be a piece. I wanted to put characters in it, and I found it again. And I decided to use it together. So I sort of, in the piece you saw me paint from blank, it was, this environment was in mind. So I'm kind of trying to match it, and now I'm just putting it back into it, and with the level of detail and completion that this environment has, it starts to sort of click quite well. Anyway, back to your question and answer. I think it's important to learn environmental fundamentals. Okay, so landscape painting, can teach you a lot about that. Learning the basics of perspective, but landscape painting can teach you a lot. Mike Hernandez taught me a lot about environment, and we didn't even focus on designing environment. It's just about indicating how to compress detail through just simple shapes and indication. That has carried through me since forever. It's important. I think you should put a lot of effort if you want to go into Keyframe and stuff, because it's even on a simple level, you'll have an understanding on how to maybe just create a believable graphic shot. Something that Michael Mann does a lot. You watch Heat or Manhunter, and there are shots where De Niro's, for example, leaning against this glass window and it's all blue. And you think, wow, that's so simple. It's so graphic and flat. But no, actually, the shot is compressed in a way. That's what flattens it out. But there's still subtlety in the perspective, and there's scale, and there's depth. Getting a feeling, getting that understanding comes from learning environment, I feel like. I don't think it's about I guess learning environment and how it's used in a cinematic sense, because you can also use a workflow for games, and an environment for games is very different. You're spelling things out very differently, I feel like, and I don't have that much experience in that matter. Even when I've worked on games, I've been used to create mood and cinematic shots. Carlos asks, is there a particular piece you have made that was very creatively and emotionally challenging? Yeah, I have a lot of those, and one of the first ones was a personal piece, and it was a reflection of things that I've sort of watched and experienced as a teenager and as a kid. And it was about, the challenge was, how do I show this piece in an honest and real way and not try to glorify the point of it. The piece is very violent, and the point is not about the violence. The point is about the complete ignorance, if you want to call it that people have, despite all of the atrocities happening in the world, we look the other way. That it was that kind of vibe that I was going for in this piece. And that was challenging because I had the right idea, but the way I was painting it again and again was more about glorifying the violence. And finally I hit the point of what the balance is. It's not about showing any of the violence, and it's about showing the contrast. So it was if I describe this painting, there's an execution happening in this war-torn city, and there's a mural of these reclined women eating grapes, and this mural is torn down because of bullets and bombings and stuff, but that's where it's happening. And the contrast between those two is what the point of the piece is. It's about getting that feeling, that guttural drop for the audience to sort of understand where I'm coming from. And that stems from a lot of things. I mean, as a child, I remembered times when I was bullied, and even the teachers at the school did nothing about it. And I went through a pretty rough 3 years in Germany as a foreign kid. A lot of foreign kids went through that at the time. And foreigners weren't seen as welcome. There was Albanians, Romanians, Bulgarians. All of us went to this school, and we would have to endure whatever happened to us because we're different. We're not German. Nothing against Germany. It's just the way the culture was at the time. Hopefully it's not the same now. But around the time the Berlin Wall had fallen, and there was a lot of tension no matter what. And there was a lot of times where I'd get hit over the head, and I'd kind of try not to cry about it, and I'd see that the teacher's looking at me, but they just kind of just look away. They don't want to do anything about it. And that sort of, I was pissed. As a child, I don't even know why, but that alone angered me. So as an adult, I would watch news videos or things that happen around the world, and they're just awful. And then you switch the channel, and it's somebody complaining about the wrong nail polish on reality TV. I can't believe my phone doesn't work. Well, dude, an entire city just flooded. The hell? How is this happening at the same time? I'm not saying like we should all just stop living life and freaking wallow in grief. No, but there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot of lack of empathy. It's my opinion. There's a lot less empathy in the world than maybe there was before, but I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong. Juan asks, what traits do studios find valuable when looking for keyframe artists? That's a really good question. It's different, I think. But you know what? My answer to that is a little different for you, and I hope this makes sense. Don't focus on what they might want to see. Focus on yourself and your skill. Focus on your own growth, your own improvement, being true to your own art and growing like that. Recently, I'm not a big fighting guy, UFC guy, but I do watch it every once in a while. And I watched this interview of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Sorry, I butchered his last name, but he retired, and whatever, fighting I don't understand anything from it. But he said something very interesting to one of the people that he was mentoring that stayed true to me in general. Not mentoring, I'm sorry. He was giving his opinion about someone that won against or lost against Conor McGregor. I don't remember. But he said, don't focus on your opponent in the sense that they're shit talking to you. They're trying to get into your head. Don't focus on that. Focus on yourself, on your own skill. Be good and excel at that. Improve at that. You will naturally do great in the fight. You'll put up a great fight. If anything, you'll win. But don't focus on what there's, don't focus on your opponent in that sense. And if I was to pull a parallel, don't focus on what other people want, you would think would want you to do in your portfolio. Do what you want to do. Do what you love to do. And it'll push you in the direction that you'll end up going into. If you cater around what a company would like you to see, that's good. You could end up working there. But what happens when that company changes or falls apart? You will have to change with them. And it's not a bad thing. It's just it just feels a little bit limiting, restraining. Less freedom in that, in my opinion. Gustav asks, any suggestions, on how to overcome the hesitation of creating a piece that comes from a very vulnerable and personal place? Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. And I know what that means to me. Sometimes I've had moments where I'm like, I want to create this piece, but that's just going to be that's too much. And I could get banned for it because I want to share it, right? But it's not about getting the followers. It's just I want to share it and I want to get a reaction out of my audience. I want to feel their experience. I want to share the story, whatever it might be. And I've had that a lot, and I've held back on ideas posting it because it might be too much. But then eventually I post them because I realize, you make the piece and you save it, you bank it, and then in the future you realize, you know what? I think now it's a great time to put that piece out. Maybe it's a situation like that. Maybe it's a piece that's too soon. If it reflects on something that's happening in the world, too soon to put it up. You might get flack for it. I mean, you are sharing it. You could share it different ways where you just send it personally. That's always free. Like you share it with your friends. Hey, what do you think? But there's something magical that happens when it's random and you put it up and the world looks at it and it's random people that look at it and you get positive and negative comments. I like all, I like all types of reactions. There's something to that. My suggestion to it is just to do it. Do it regardless of what, people might think of that vulnerability. Just do it. Create it. You are in your safe space doing this piece. Then the next thing is maybe having the courage to post it if it's really that much. Or maybe you don't need to worry about that at all. Because in the end, this is art. And the interesting thing about that is it's always going to be perceived as that. It feels like people look at art and they go, oh, it's a very striking image. It's beautiful. It's dark. Oh my God, what's happening? They might not see it the way you're seeing it. If it's a piece about yourself and it's about a time where you were humiliated and you're painting that, you're clearly painting that, and you put that piece up, the audience might not look at it the same way you have, but at least you're expressing yourself honestly. You don't even have to explain it. Oh man, there's a great quote David Lynch says all the time when people say, like, can you explain what the movie's about? And he laughs and he goes, no, watching the movie is the explanation. I don't have to say a thing. I made my explanation. There it is. I'm not going to say anything. Go see it. So, like, that's the same thing with the paintings we do. There's your explanation. I'm not going to blabber about it unless it's a situation like that where I am willingly want to give a little bit of a backstory because it leads into something else. But I like to just put it up and move on to the next idea. And if it gets a reaction, it gets a reaction. If it's not, sometimes I was doing these pieces of work that were very graphic at one point, in a dark way, in a violent way, and this was during CG Hub, and I'd be putting them up, and I wouldn't read the comments until like 2-3 months later, if there were any, and I there was a mixed bag. Like, there was positive, and then there was the comments that were like, you don't like people. This is brutal. Why would, oh my God. But that's a great sign. That means you accomplished your job. And it's not real. It's a painting. And the emotion is real. But this never happened. Or maybe it did. But no one needs to know. No one will know. Unless you tell them. Like, this is actually real. This happened to me exactly the way I painted it. Then that's another level of presenting your art, I think. Nachman asks, what is the usual turnaround per image when working with a studio? What is the expectation of pace? That's a good question. Again, that varies. With Marvel, it also varies. Sometimes we're on a project and they have the freedom where, like, oh, it's a keyframe every week or every 2 weeks, a finished frame. But sometimes they want to do things where it's like they check up on you on a weekly basis. Like every Wednesday, turn in a work in progress thing. So that doesn't just mean turn in a sketch. There's a thing to that where you don't want to just turn in a looseness, because then it might not be even looked at. So you have to work a bit faster so they can see something at a close, presentable state, like a tight loose, a very well indicated piece, and that varies. I mean, sometimes it's like if it's Wednesday, you have till Friday to turn in something, but you have the idea of, oh, it could be a little rough. But sometimes that rough doesn't apply. So it's like, can you do it? If you can't, it's okay, but can you do it? So it varies. It just varies. So in this painting right now, I'm getting to the point where I actually really like how the figure stands by itself, and I eventually remove that shape in the background. So I'm like, it's creating an awkward feeling. Why does there need to be a person? Maybe if it's just darkness and atmosphere, it'll feel better. And I think that's what I end up doing. Max asks, when you were a student, did you ever get stuck in the sort of comfort zone of only doing studies and never actually making any original pieces for yourself? or your portfolio, etc. I'm sure I did. I just don't remember. I know there was a time where I just did thumbnails, composition, loose thumbnails, and I did that forever. And I really loved it. And even my friends had positive reactions. Like, these are great. Look at these thumbnails. You could, but then it would be followed up. So you could definitely turn this into a nice, like, environment piece. I'm like, but I don't want to. I kind of like how loose and interesting, and they're tiny, and they're all in your sketchbook, and you're showing your sketchbook. It's not stuck. You're kind of enjoying where you are, but eventually you realize that you need to move maybe forward from that and do something more. But who's to say that what you've done now isn't something great? Because realistically speaking, what I used to do back then, and I was told that, render it out further, make it into a finished piece. And I'm like, that means I'm not pushing myself forward. I'm not learning. If I was to do that today, if I was to release a series of loose pieces, it will be very differently received. And I think it's because I've shown mileage I've gone through. And there's a certain type of respect, I guess, if you want to say that. I don't mean to sound like I'm blowing my horn here, but it's it's interesting to think about, like, the loose ideas that I could, if I chose to put them out today, the same loose mannerisms back then. Granted, I'm very aware that back then I was not where I am today skill-wise. I've definitely improved, of course. But I don't know. Sometimes I think about that, and I'm just thinking, like, why can't things be left sketchy or rough or in that terms of, like, being stuck or whatnot. So I wonder if that answered your question. It was a kind of a weird answer, actually. What I would suggest is, whatever you're going for, shoot for that. If you want to tell story with your work, always tell yourself, I need to be telling story with whatever I do. And that will keep you out of the mindset of feeling like you're stuck. Does that make sense? Like, if you feel like you're stuck just because you're in a comfort zone doing this, what looks like the same thing again and again, maybe to unstuck yourself, you have to apply the idea that although you're doing the same thing again and again, tell different stories with that same thing again and again. Does that make sense? If you just like to paint cars and you feel stuck because all you're doing is painting cars, and if story is your thing, for example, maybe tell stories with the cars you're painting. And make it different from piece to piece. Here's something I haven't mentioned. I made it also a goal as I was growing. Every piece, every idea that I put up is different from the previous one. Everything is different. I'm not repeating myself story-wise, mood-wise, changing it slightly. Fine. I make dark work as a whole, but within that darkness, there's variety. I try to also touch on different genres. Maybe it's not always horror. Maybe it's very simple family oriented. or fantasy, high fantasy, Lord of the Rings stuff. Nachman asks, how do you break away from the trap of painting realistically and start using your own voice? I know that is a vague question, but it's something that plagues me daily. Painting realistically and using your own voice. That's a good question. I don't know if I ever painted ultra realistically to relate to that, but I definitely had an aim to go there. Especially because of photo bashing and whatnot. But maybe try not to think about it as I am painting realistically. Maybe just think of it as I am saying something with my painting. Then it won't matter at that point if it's realistic or not. Your voice will be expressed through what you're saying with your painting. That's your voice. Much like a movie. The way it's direct, all live action movies are real, right? I mean, there's no one even questions it. But it's about how real it could be. It's how immersive it could be. There's a style to that. Is it a long one-take shot? Or is it cut in a stylistic way? Are the compositions very graphic? But the director's goal is to tell a story. The director's what's in his mind is really what he's trying to say with this movie. So, like in the same way with your painting, it's what you want to say, realistic or not. I think when you get into that type of mindset, you will you'll start producing work even faster, meaning you'll pile up on ideas, and you won't care if it's graphic, abstract, or hyper real, or whatever. Carlos asks, how do you think the film industry will be in the following years? That's a great question. I don't know. I hopefully more taking even more risks with what the movies are, like the ideas that are coming out. I mean, we still have Paul Thomas Anderson making movies. We have Ari Aster and the Safdie brothers. Who just, Ari Aster made Hereditary and Midsommar, and Safdie brothers Good Time and Uncut Gems, and Paul Thomas Anderson with Boulevard of Disappointment, or whatever he's making now, but his last film being Phantom Thread. You have Scorsese, you have all these masters that are still going, and hopefully they inspire. And in terms of the field, with Marvel and Disney coming up, there's always something that will push to tell a story differently, more boldly, maybe to reflect our political climate, maybe, I don't know, but hopefully it just keeps expanding more out of the box and doesn't go stale. So this demo's done, and here's the actual piece in better resolution. And someone asked earlier about Mixer Brush, and I could demonstrate just very quickly here. Mixer Brush, the way I think about it is like a organic sampling tool. So if I was to use, let's say, just for the sake of simplicity and explaining this, when you're on mixer brush and you sample an area, you watch this square up here, and I'm literally sampling this spot depending on how large the mixer brush is. So if I sample that, now you'll see that it's huge. If I sample this, you can see the figure here. So when I paint like this, depending on how big your brush is, there you go. And the rest that smears is really the edge behind it. So with that in mind, if your brush is really tiny and you sample an area that has somewhat of noise, you can sort of tile things. You can create noise within noise. So like you create your own noise here, and then you sample that with slightly bigger, right? And you can paint in such a way where it gives you this organic, random feel that is otherwise very impossible to painstakingly do on purpose. You're dealing with these happy accidents. It's constant, and I like to use this very early on. Sometimes I like to use it when it's on a very small scale, and it's not necessarily a hard round. I use this sort of pastel-y like brush, and when it's a tiny frame, when I sample it, see, this already is starting to feel like, if this was a frame on its own, it's starting to feel like a shot. If this is the ground, right, and this is the sky, and now I could put indication of people here, like there's, and if this was to become a piece, I have this unintentional noise going through, and when I start painting into that with mixer brush, still at sort of low res, because at high res this stuff tends to chug, and maybe sometimes it crashes. You don't necessarily want that, but when I make it even finer, see, now that noise becomes even more tactile, like you're staring at an image of a canvas. Something's been painted on a canvas, and your goal is not to emulate, is just to run with the feeling, because that's something, at least for me, that's where I started from. I actually learned painting in acrylics, oils, and gouache. I'm not a master at it, but that's where I was before I started learning digital. So mixer brush gets that for me. It's part of the feeling. It's part of that excitement. When I already have my story and mood in mind, when I start painting it like that, it enhances it. It's like a good cup of coffee. It just feels right. But all the ideas apply. All the ideas of value, composition. Doesn't matter if you're using flat brush or a mixer or whatever, or as a matter of fact, actually, sometimes you might not be able to tell right now, but sometimes I just paint with a mouse, because it forces me to think about the decisions. There's no fanciness with the mouse. You can't be as you can probably get better and better, but there's no, you're not finessing things. You're not moving your arm the same way when you're holding a brush. The point here is that I'm always trying to disconnect even further. When I paint on the iPad, I hold the pen all the way back, as opposed to in a familiar way, the way we write with pens or pencils. So using a mouse sometimes breaks free of those rules, and it's more about the thoughts and the ideas you're putting down. It's clearly about that. I hope that makes sense. So mixer brush, in a way, is kind of like that as well, because it's accidental, and it's really just, it's not about being perfect. It's about actually dealing with the weirdness that it creates for you, and moving forward with it, and letting things breathe, letting the paint feel transparent, stuff like that. Oh, see ya, Kinman. Thanks for being here, man. Alexi, how's it going, man? Alexi asks, you've mentioned that you transitioned from game industry into the film. Did you ever think of transitioning back? It seems games are capable to tell serious stories nowadays. Oh, absolutely. And I'm very open to work with games to this day. I mean, I was fortunate enough to work on the trailer for The Last of Us Part 2. And I worked with DICE for a bit to create mood and inspiration frames and story frames for one of their games. I don't know if it ever came out or if it's being made, but I totally agree with you on that regard. Is games nowadays have even more freedom than certain situations with film, like the way story could be told with the game. I mean, that kind of dates back as well. I mean, you look at Silent Hill 2. That came out when? In the 90s? And that, or 2000s? I don't know. But I'm way off on the date on that. I know it didn't come out in the 90s. Quake came out in the 90s, and that was a big thing. Silent Hill looks so good. Silent Hill 2, for its time, looked so good. The story behind Silent Hill 2 is amazing. And today, you see stuff like, I don't know, I mean, Love, Death, and Robots is all 3D animated. It's all CG, however you want to call it. That is also how games look like. They can look like that. Very close, especially with the Unreal Engine being the way it is now. It's amazing. So, it's more about, like, if I had that opportunity and if I was interested, or time, if I had the time, I would definitely jump back into working on a game if I had that. But I don't know. Working at Marvel has been a dream come true since the beginning of when I started working there, and I've just been focusing on that for a long time. Of course, I've worked with other freelance companies, and I mean, I had a very lucky opportunity to work with Alexi at Blur, and that, just having, not at Blur. I mean, obviously it was from home, but I don't know. It's a good question, because I do think about that, and then I just spin back around and I go, oh, I'll just, I should just stick to what I truly love about making art like this, which really goes very well hand in hand with where I am already. But I don't know. Maybe that opportunity will come around, and we'll see. Alex, I have not seen Green Knight yet. I wanna watch that. Guys, thank you for being here and chatting. It's almost 8. I think the stream is gonna come to an end now. If anybody has any more questions, I'll try and answer them. But otherwise, let me just bring this back. Ooh, that does not look friendly at all. It's so dark here. That is so weird. I need to create a bounce light. There you go. Now you can sort of see me. This looks like a shot from Alien when the power goes out in the ship. Tunser, do I teach right now? And if so, where? I will be teaching Concept Design Academy. You can look it up online. Great school. Great artists teaching there. Kevin is amazing. I'll be teaching there this fall. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure talking to everybody. It means a lot that all of you are here. I hope this was inspiring and helpful. And I hope what I was talking about made sense. And just remember to just be positive with yourself and be true with yourself. Be true with your art. Okay, guys. I think that's going to wrap it up for now. Thank you again. If anybody has questions, please leave it in the comments below, and I will try to answer it. Otherwise, thanks for being here. It was inspiring and motivating, and I look forward to doing another live stream in the near future. So, thank you, everybody. Good morning and good night.